Self-employed and want to reduce your tax bill, knowing which expenses you can claim can make a huge difference, and it's often easier than you think. Hi, I'm Michelle Eames. I help business owners make sense of their finances. In this video, we'll dive into the essentials, the type of expenses that HMRC allows you to claim, how to avoid common pitfalls, and some smart tips to help you keep your records in check as well. This info is aimed at saving you time, money, and potential headaches down the line also. So if you're ready to hold on to more of your hard-earned income, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Understanding claimable expenses. So let's start with the basics. What exactly are claimable business expenses? Put simply, allowable business expenses are costs that you incur specifically for running your business. So they can be deducted from your income. So for example, it's your income less your deductible expenses. That equals your net taxable profit. That's the bit that you're going to pay tax on. And HMRC has pretty clear guidelines about this. An expense has to be solely for business purposes, not personal use. So for example, if you buy a laptop that you only use for business, you can claim the full cost. But if it's used for personal and business, you'd only claim a percentage of it. That's how much you use it for work. That's how we claim that or calculate that percentage. Understanding this basic rule helps you separate out expenses you can claim and those that you can't. A rule of thumb is if you've incurred this expense because you've got this business and you wouldn't have the expense if you didn't have the business, generally speaking, that's going to be a business expense and needs looking at. Some of the most common claimable business expenses. So there are some common expenses that you will come across more so than others that HMRC allows you to claim. And what I'd like to do is just run through a few of those. It's surprising how many times people aren't claiming even for some of the most basic ones, as they don't realise they apply to them. So for example, the first one is office expenses. This covers things like desks, chairs, equipment, furniture, stationery, even hardware, software, phone and internet bills. Though again, remember with phone and internet bills, you're only going to claim the portion that's used for business itself. The second one is travel expenses. If you're travelling specifically for business, you can claim mileage for your car, public transport fares, taxi fares, parking fees. There's all sorts. We can even claim, as a sole trader, you can claim part of your vehicle, for example, if that's used for business as well. But just remember that commuting from home to your regular workplace doesn't count. The third one I'd like to cover is advertising and marketing. So that includes costs for promoting your business. So think about things like website expenses, for example, social media ads, printed materials such as leaflets and business cards, websites and platforms that you join, such as LinkedIn, Checkatrade. There's all sorts out there that you might join just to promote yourself, to network, and to get your business out and about. The fourth item to cover, professional fees. Obviously, if you're paying an accountant or legal advice related to your business, those fees can be claimed. Training costs, so training and courses that improve skills that are directly related to your business are also allowed. For example, if you run a graphic design business and you take a course on some new design software, you can claim for that. Just bear in mind though, it tends to be training courses that are for upskilling, not for something that is a brand new trade. So if you were a graphic designer and you decided to go and become a plumber, you couldn't take that initial plumbing course as just a general expense. It would have to be upskilling after that. Sixth one I'd like to cover is utilities and rent for a home office. Now, if you work from home, you can claim a proportion of your home's running costs like heating, electricity, rent, even council tax. You can either use HMRC's simplified rate or calculate the exact amount based on how much space and time you use that room for business, for example. And don't forget things like storage. If you've got a lot of parts, materials, you've got to store those somewhere, so that can be taken into account as well. And then there's other essentials, so things like insurance, banking fees, subscriptions that are relevant to your business, they can also be claimed. These are just some of the essentials, but the general rule is if it's for business use, you should be able to claim at the very least part of the cost, so keep an eye on those expenses. It's surprising what's there. Special rules for certain expenses. So there are a few expenses that you should be aware of also and that have to be treated in a specific way. So the first one of those is using your car for business. If you use your personal car for business, you can either claim a simplified rate per mile, so mileage is what people often refer it to, currently 45p per mile, and that covers everything from your fuel to your wear and tear on the vehicle as well. And you need to keep a detailed record of that. For example, the date, the purpose of the journey, postcodes to and from, for example. You can claim actual costs for things like fuel, insurance, repairs, etc. as well. That's another option for it. So that if you're not doing as many miles, for example, that might be the better option to do. But again, remember, commuting to and from your regular workplace isn't claimable. The second part of these is food and accommodation. Now, when you're traveling for business, you can claim food and accommodation costs, but remember, you can't claim for things like taking a client out for dinner. That counts as entertainment, which isn't allowed. You can claim, even down to a glass of wine, for example, when you're out and about for business. If you're having to stay somewhere overnight, you have to get a meal, for example. That is allowable, but drinking the whole bottle probably isn't. Capital allowances is another area. It covers bigger purchases like equipment or vehicles, for example. You might claim under capital allowances for these, and these let you spread the cost of these items over a few years. So if you buy a big piece of machinery, you'll claim a portion of it each year, for example, rather than all at once. If you bought a digger for your business doing groundwork, as an example, you wouldn't necessarily want to claim all of that in the first year in your account. It would be spread over 3 to 4 years. But knowing these rules will help you claim correctly and avoid any surprises if HMRC ever reviews your expenses. Tips for efficient record keeping. Now, let's talk about record keeping. It's a crucial part of making sure all of your accounts go smoothly. It's essential to keep detailed and organised records of all your expenses, because HMRC could reject some of the claims if your records aren't up to scratch. I recommend using accounting software. There are a few different options out there: Xero, QuickBooks, Free Agent, to name just a few. You can even use just a simple spreadsheet, whatever works for you. Google Sheets, Excel spreadsheets, they're still classed as digital for HMRC. It doesn't need to be complicated. You don't need to start learning a new language if you don't want to with software. A spreadsheet can work just as well. But remember, save all your receipts. Keep mileage logs if you're claiming travel, and hold on to those bank statements. It might seem like a lot, but good records make the process far easier, and also you'll thank yourself come tax time when you're not having to scrabble about and remember what things were for. Avoiding common mistakes. So before we wrap up, let's cover a few common mistakes that people make when claiming expenses and how you can avoid them. Firstly, be careful not to mix personal and business expenses. It can be very tempting to claim something that's used personally, but HMRC can disallow it if they think it's not for business. Another one, don't miss out on actual allowable expenses. There are so many out there that you can claim for. It's just a case of going through and making sure you're scraping every little bit out when it comes to allowable expenses. People often overlook small things like travel costs or home expenses. that could save them money running your business from home office. Perfect thing to make sure you're putting into those accounts. Lastly, if you're ever unsure about a claim, consider speaking to an accountant. They'll have up-to-date knowledge and can help you ensure that you're claiming correctly. It is worth the money that you pay for an accountant, as usually you'll find they're going to save you more than their fees on tax. All right, that's it for today. We've covered the basics of claimable expenses, including common types, special rules, and some handy record keeping tips for you as well. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more insights into managing your business finances. If you've got any questions or suggestions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And thanks so much for watching, and good luck with your business expenses. Every penny counts, so make sure to claim what you're entitled to.